Welcome to another episode of Unleash Your Supernova Live. I am your host, Nova Lorraine, and I'm with my partner in crime, Ryon Esquire, and that's Ryan with an O, guys, R-Y-O-N. I am the author of the new book, Unleash Your Supernova. I'm also the founder of Raine magazine, Pink Kangaru, the Raine School of Fashion, and the soon-to-launch Nova and Ryon International Fashion Collection. I am so excited to be with you for another episode of diving deep into creativity, how to beat burnout, how to tap into your limitless potential. We are here to show you how to unleash your supernova. This is powered by Pink Kangaru, and that's Kangaroo with a U, your home for wild thinkers. So if you're looking for stories to help build you on the personal level or business level, definitely check out Pink Kangaroo Podcast Network. Hey, Ryan, how you doing?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
I am good. And for those of you that are joining us for the first time, Ryan is a business advisor and coach. And you got to check out his site, RyanEsquire.com. And when I met Ryan, I met him as what we described, Ryan, as a visionary coach, right? Someone who brings your vision to life. And that just really resonated with me because I was like, hey, I have a vision. I do vision boards. You can help me bring what's on my vision board to life. Let's go. We became fast friends. And Ryan's amazing. So I'm excited to have him as my partner in crime on Unleash Your Supernova Live.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that, the vision. And I don't use that in my message as much as I did back when we first met. And I may go back to it, but it's funny. I was listening to a podcast yesterday, and the guest was actually Alex Rodriguez, a Hall of Famer as far as like baseball, plays for the Yankees and Texas Rangers and several other teams. And one thing I didn't know about him was how much of an incredible businessman he is. I mean, he's done a lot of incredible things, but right now he's the CEO of a SPAC. SPACs are all the rage, but he's been doing those for a while. They're taking 7 companies public this year, so he's done very well. But that's not the point. One of the points that he made that I thought was really impactful, and it really summed up quickly, succinctly, and beautifully what you're kind of looking for when it comes to, in his example, companies to invest in. But really, what that equates to is companies that you see huge potential success in, right? And he had his VCP was his little, quick little 3 letters. And it was, vision. What was the C? Vision, that's it. Vision, capital, and people, right? And that's what companies need to succeed. They need all 3, right? And the important part about what you're saying is, so many entrepreneurs, especially small entrepreneurs and early entrepreneurs, do not understand the importance of vision, right? Having a clear, concise purpose. And what that does is it not only gives you a direction in which you're working toward and making decisions toward, but it also allows you to, in your messaging, really clearly, concisely convey what you do, right? What you do as a company, what your values are, what your mission is, and how you can benefit your customers, right? And so, I think it's a hugely important topic or idea that most entrepreneurs don't think about because they're not told or they don't have time or, whatever. And of course, capital and people we can discuss later too, but they're also obvious, but you brought up vision, so.
Yeah, no, I think, starting with the vision, no matter where you are, if you have a business, if you're a student, if you are about to become a mother, I think it's so important to start with that. And I actually had 2 consulting calls today, and what I had asked them was, what is if you could, not even if, I say clear your mind, clear everything that you know right now, and you have a blank piece of paper and a pen, what would you write down that you would ideally like to see yourself doing 3 years from now? Forget the resources you have right now. Forget, what you're doing. 3 years from now, what would you like to be doing? And it's such a surprising answer that I get because most people are planning out based on where they are right now, right? They are like, okay, I'm a student in college and I'm da-da-da-da, or, I live in Tennessee, so the only thing that's available to me is what's in Tennessee. But if you just cleared your mind, and let's say you do live in Tennessee, let's say you are in college, and let's say in 3 years, you want to be, teaching classes in southern France. Well, that has nothing to do with what you're doing now, or may potentially have nothing to do with what you're doing now. But if that's your wish list, what I call your want list, then you can start making plans towards that. And so now everything that you're doing is towards this vision, and you're so excited and you're so motivated, right? And so I think it's so important to start with that, because it does help you, come back to the present moment and assess what you have now. What are the resources you have right now? Who do you know in your life that can help you actualize that desired vision, not the circumstantial vision, but the desired vision. Yeah. So I think that's really important.
Because really, that's it. Like, one of my favorite, and I have it on a lot of my, it's actually on my emails right now. And I love the definition of vision, because vision is the art of seeing what other people can't, right? And I love that, because it plays on two levels. I like it as a person who can't see, because it plays on, like, two levels of thing with me not being able to see it. But then, as a coach, what I help people accomplish as far as achieving their vision, or maybe even in envisioning a future they never even thought possible, right? And so I really like, that double layer meaning as far as my marketing is concerned. But it's funny, just talking to people, not so much people I deal with, but, like, people who are entrepreneurs, aren't creatives, how many people, really truly cannot envision a future, right? Especially if it's a future that's different than where they currently are, that they just can't do it. And trust me, I love reality. I mean, I understand, being realistic, and being in the present moment, but you're also never going to accomplish anything huge or different or exciting unless you can envision something that's different than your current, situation, right? And, I really wish more people could do that, would embrace it, because they could go on and live much more interesting, dynamic, or, better lives than what they currently are, right? Because, in many ways, we're only limited by our imagination as far as what we truly can accomplish, and, or at least what we attempt, right? And so, like I say, it's one of those things that I wish more people not only heard about, but the reality is believed in.
Absolutely. And I do this usually at the end of the year, but I think we should do this quarterly, because I do have, in the book I talk about your why, and, you and I are on the same page and how important that is in knowing your why. And I do recommend that people reassess their why every quarter, because life changes so quickly.
Yep.
And typically I, will get the kids together, and I'll say, okay, guys, get out the paper, get some magazines. We're putting together a vision board. And it's a fun family activity, and we do it, because we're all together during the holidays, and it's exciting. It's like, oh, let's play, but it's so powerful of taking that image and either finding words or photos that can capture that on paper, because now you're turning it from just a thought to a physical thing. And it's almost like committing to that, right?
It's so funny because, it's absolutely committing to it. It's so funny because I this was not planned. I ended up writing, it was a blog post either yesterday or the day before. And because I had read a statement from an email off of Simon Sinek. I'm on his email list. And it was talking about, sharing an idea gives it life. And that's all it said. And it was short and simple and so powerful. And I really love the word life in that statement, because if an idea just stays an idea, that's all it ever is. It's in your head. It's in theory, it's in the ether, right? And, when you share it with someone, in many ways, it is like giving birth to a child. You are bringing that idea into the world, right? You're giving it life. You are allowing it to now move around, interact, bounce off people, share, commingle, succeed, fail. Like, I just thought it was such a powerful word. And so that's very much what you're doing with the vision board. Is you're taking an idea that's abstract, it's in the ether, and you're putting that, you're giving it life, right? You're giving it permanence. You're giving it to the world to now interact with and present you with those opportunities to whether it's a networking, whether it's education, whether it's capital, right? Whatever the situation may be. And again, I thought that was such a simple but profound statement about, why you do share your ideas, because not only is it accountability on many levels, but it's an opportunity for the world to now, or the universe in this example, I guess is a better word, the universe to now allow you to, pursue that idea, right?
I know you're absolutely right. And, I mentioned early on in the book that a story that I share is when I decided to open up about my dreams of going to New York and becoming a fashion designer with a coworker. Mm-hmm. And she then went on to refer me to a designer in New York that I could speak to and actually ask questions about this mysterious field that I knew nothing about. I was in the middle of Connecticut, surrounded by cow country. I did not have any exposure to the fashion industry. And then that continued to lead me to where I am today. But just from that one moment where I decided to share my dream of becoming a fashion designer with a coworker. And so that's that concept that you mentioned as it relates to sharing your ideas brings them to life. And it's so powerful. And I hope our listeners just write that down so they can remember. And, use your gut in terms of who you share your idea with. But the more you say it and the more you hear it, the more real it becomes. So, yeah, that was good. I know we didn't plan on talking about vision and ideas and all this, but this is such an important topic.
It was. And I also love how you start out in cow country and now live in Amish country. That's a really nice circle of life that you
circle of life. Yes.
Circle of life.
Oh gosh, yeah, full circle. Definitely going full circle there, country to country. There's quite a bit of cows where we live now.
I am fully aware. My dad owned a dairy for 30 years, and he used to buy a lot of cattle out of Pennsylvania. So yeah, it's definitely cow country as well.
Well, I am excited to talk about the obstacles of entrepreneurship, and I call it the climb up Mount Entrepreneurship in the book because it's real, right? The challenge of successfully bringing an idea to execution is real. I mean, most entrepreneurs, 95%, 98%, do not succeed in the first few years of their business. So why is that? Why we were just talking about ideas and vision boarding and how important it is to get those ideas out of your head and on paper because it brings it to life. Well, okay, let's say I did that. I had my vision board. I wrote down, I journaled what I wanted to do. I'm telling the neighbors, I'm telling the friends. And I finally decided to take that step in starting my business. And I'm 18 months in and failing miserably. Why is that? So let's talk about that. Let's talk about what are some of those obstacles that entrepreneurs encounter and why is there such a climb, to successful entrepreneurship. So I'm going to turn to one of the chapters in the book. And again, it's called The Climb Up Mount Everest. And I'm just going to go through the main topics and we can kind of dive deeper into each of them. So number 1, no financial track record. Number 2, stereotype. Number 3, loneliness. Number 4, criticism. Number 5, stress. Number 6, finding the right team. And number 7, getting customers. So those are a few of the topics that I mentioned in that particular chapter as it relates to obstacles of entrepreneurship. So let's dive into the first section. Number 1, I'm just going to read a small excerpt from this paragraph. One of the most common challenges experienced by any entrepreneur is the issue of finances. More seasoned and older entrepreneurs have the benefit of building an impressive credit history, which makes it easier for them to get loans and investors. A newbie or a younger entrepreneur cannot brag about having all of these resources because it takes time to build them. Because of your limited access to financial capital, you have fewer chances for mistakes to happen. Ensure that you have enough money set aside to help you through those tough times. Furthermore, don't expect to profit from your business immediately. It can take a minimum of 2 years before you see a profit. Growing a business as a young entrepreneur is totally possible, yet having an organized and tested strategy is very important in order to kick off on a positive note. So what would you like to add to that as it relates to not having a financial record?
It ties in nicely to that VCP I was talking about with CB and Capital. It's very true because two things. Like you said, young entrepreneurs don't have that these years of built up savings or built up equity in a home or whatever it may be to where they can leverage it to start that business, right? And the other part about it is entrepreneurship, because like you said, 95% or so failure rate is viewed as a very risky investment from a banking standpoint. So it's incredibly difficult to get a bank to want to take a chance on you, right? And so, really the nice thing about the way things are now from the standpoint of technology, in this example, the internet, is in many ways it has completely changed the game for entrepreneurship from a startup perspective. It doesn't take near as much money to start up a business online as it did 40 years ago when more than likely it was going to be a brick and mortar location somewhere. And, you had to not only pay rent, but you had to lock in for a long term, right? And you were now obligated financially, for that, or whether it was billed or whatever the situation may be, right? So now the downside about, how easy it is to start up nowadays is there's a lot of competition out there, right? Because the barrier of entry is lower. But, as far as the capital part, one of the mistakes I made as a young entrepreneur is everybody will tell you everything that you need, and not only do you need it, but you need it right now. And not only is it right now, but it's usually expensive. and it will be the key to your success. It's always that way. And the reality is it's bullshit, right? What really the goal of entrepreneurship in many ways is, yes, to change the world, but early on in the beginning it's to survive. It's to pay your bills and survive and do whatever you need to do to make sure that you are open tomorrow to serve your people. And in many ways, that is being disciplined when it comes to making decisions and saying no and saying, you know what, I don't need to pay for this now. I can do this, which may be 50 to 60% as good, but I can afford it, and it's going to make sure I'm open tomorrow versus getting me in debt, putting it on a credit card at high interest, hoping it works out, because you never know how good a service provider is going to be until you work with them, hoping it works out, and then, being obligated to pay it later. And so that to me it requires patience, it requires discipline, and it requires realism. And so much of that is not what you see on the internet, whether it's Facebook or Instagram or whatever's out there, as far as the glamour of entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship is amazing and glamorous once you make it. It's a struggle and not glamorous at all in the beginning. Doesn't mean it's not worth it, but I think it's, a realistic picture of what it is like to start that I wish more of us were actually told, right?
Right.
So that's kind of my additional.
Yeah, no, I think those are excellent points, and similar to industries in the arts and more creative industries, to the person looking on, oh, I want to be a singer, I want to be a fashion designer, I want to be an actor or actress. They see the red carpets, they see the fashion shows, they see the award shows, and this is all that they imagine that life to be like. But having acted and have done live theater, the majority of your time is spending learning your lines, rehearsing, practicing, waiting hours for your turn, and there's a lot more work. 98% is what they say is the schlepping part, and 2% is the glamour part. And so you want to make sure why you're doing it is in check. But then you also said surviving for the next day. If you are truly believe that you're bringing value into the world, and this is not just a money game for you and why you were getting into entrepreneurship, but you truly believe you're delivering something that's going to help someone in some way, it's so important that you can survive so that product or that information or that service can get to the intended audience that you had in mind to be helped. And so understanding your numbers and not being afraid of the word finance or money or credit or investing is a big part of it. And so if you're choosing to get into entrepreneurship, or if you're in the early stages of entrepreneurship and still trying to figure it out, definitely do a personal check on how do I feel about money? Am I really strong with it? Do I need to tap into a resource that's stronger than me? Do I need a coach? Do I need, a bookkeeper, whatever it is? And then if I know that I have these goals, we talked about vision at the beginning of the show, having a vision, knowing where you want to go. And if we're talking about this, don't be in such a rush. Sometimes you may need that time to set yourself up with the right knowledge or, credit track record if you're going to self-finance this, or building a network so you have people you can go to when you're ready to get funding if you're going an angel route or a VC route. And so believe in that idea, understand the vision, give yourself a realistic timeline to reach that vision. But as Ryan said, try to not even try, let's get rid of that word. Survive.
Yeah, survive.
Okay.
Make decisions to survive.
Survive and make those hard decisions along the way to go lean and until you can stay alive. So I remember, shortly after I graduated from fashion design school, I was called to give consulting advice, branding advice to this tech startup. And the startup then went to, I think within 6 months after I met the founder, he was able to get angel investor of $1 million. And he wanted to bring me on as one of the key executives in the startup. Well, for personal reasons, I decided not to join the startup, but I did refer a good friend to take the position that he had offered me. Anyway, to fast forward, here he is, $1,000. He has a superstar team, Ivy Leaguers, everyone was pumped. He did his research. He knew the market. He had a test product and he had $1 million in his pocket. Well, before the end of the year, I think he grew to about, maybe 40 or 50 employees. By the end of the year, he was down to 8 employees. Okay. And no money left in the coffers. And he had to go lean in order to survive. Within 10 years, or it may have been less than 10 years, maybe it was about 5 to 7 years after launch, he went public as a $1 billion company. And so he could have easily crashed and burned, but he said, no, this isn't working, whatever we're doing, because even if you get the funding, you know what? Those plans may not work. And so it's so important to know when to pivot, how to stay lean. And if you truly believe, like I said, that you're delivering value to this intended audience, then that survival is so important. That intention to survive is so important.
Well, another example of that is actually Slack. Slack did not start out as a communication platform for businesses. What the hell was it? I can't remember what their original concept was, but it was nothing like what it is now. And, the reason they were allowed to essentially survive, because they had venture capital, was the venture capital people believed in the team, not the idea per se. And it allowed the entrepreneurs to have time to pivot to what they're doing now. The point is not that, because not everybody has venture capital, but the point is more toward, like you're talking about, pivoting, right? Being married to a particular idea is in many ways bad. Being married to being an entrepreneur and believing in yourself is amazing. But I've pivoted 3 different times trying to figure out what the hell I want to do. as a business person. I started out, something completely, I want to do online shipping, right? I'm like, let's do something, stay home, be lazy, whatever. Which went to fixing and flipping, which went to coaching, which is what I do now, right? So, there's nothing wrong with changing your mind and pivoting, right? It is all about believing in yourself and then really doing it for the right reason, which is providing value for the customer, right? As long as you kind of have those two things always in mind, you'll typically be able, given enough time, because there's also, financial and family restraints, which sometimes cause people to have to go get jobs, right? But if given enough time, you'll be able to really not only find yourself, but find yourself within your market.
That's right. That's right. Speaking of that I think is a good lead-in to one of the other components of why this marathon is a climb upwards. Yeah. And sometimes it feels like you're tackling this mountain. That comment just made me want to jump to loneliness as one of the 7 points that I brought up, because I think it's something that's not about enough as it relates to entrepreneurship.
Yep.
And it is something that is very real and can easily be the main reason why you step away. So let me just read what I have in the book. In the process of building your business, it can be difficult to keep up with social events and opportunities. As a new entrepreneur, you may not have colleagues to visit with, and your loved ones may not really understand the entrepreneurial route you have taken. With the demands of your schedule, it can also be difficult to get out and meet new individuals or keep up with your current relationships. Fortunately, there are other young business visionaries out there who are in a similar situation. In the end, there is a powerful effect of being surrounded by people who will constantly encourage you rather than tear you down. Putting your energy on the positive people in your life makes it a lot simpler to develop the business of your dreams. So the loneliness factor is real. I started my business with 2 young children, and most young moms weren't, producing fashion shows and meeting with investors and doing casting calls for models and going into the garment district to find new fabric. And so I didn't have the traditional play dates with my kids when they were younger. So we had just moved to a new town. I didn't really know anyone. Most of the families in our neighborhood were families that had been there for 30 plus years. And so there weren't a lot of young adults or young parents in our neighborhood. So it was definitely a lonely journey early on. And fashion can be a very competitive industry. So, as a young business entering a competitive industry, there's not going to be a lot of fashion designers reaching their arms out to say, hey, this is how I did it. This is how you can do it too. And that could be enough for some people to just give up. But there are answers out there. There are other entrepreneurs like yourself. They could be in your industry, but maybe instead of, let's say in my situation, I'm connecting with another fashion designer, maybe I'm connecting with a photographer, a fashion photographer. We both share the same loves, and there's still challenges to the journey that we both can share and support each other with. And so maybe it's within that industry, but a non-competitive category in that industry in terms of where you can find peers and colleagues to connect with. And then there's also mentors and coaches, that can also offer a tremendous amount of support. I didn't have my first mentor until, 7 years. I don't know, 7, 8 years after I started my business. But it made such a difference. Like, he was my champion. He was my cheerleader. I felt like I could do anything. And so sometimes it's just one individual that you need in your life.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts, Ryan? What would you like to say?
2 points. One of them is, especially as an entrepreneur, you can be incredibly lonely even though you're surrounded by a bunch of people, whether it's family or whether it's coworkers. Because in many ways it is a entrepreneurship is so different, especially early on, than being an employee or being part of like a corporate America, right? Because it's just a different journey. And if you're not if you don't have someone who is on that similar path or was on that similar path, and can really truly understand on an emotional level what you're going through, that's very lonely, right? Even though you have a supportive family and they're there to back you, they may not really understand what you're going through, and therefore may not be able to really have the conversations that need to be had, not only so maybe you can pivot, but, so you can really truly work with the emotions, the emotional up and down, the emotional, draining events that come along with the entrepreneurship journey, right? And so, that's one thing, right? You can be super lonely even though you're within a crowd of supportive people, if they're not the right people, right? Cause it's funny. I'm lucky from the standpoint, like I have a supportive family, but it's weird. Even though my dad owned the business, he hasn't been, he hasn't related as well to what I'm doing on the entrepreneurship side of it. So I haven't experienced it fully, but I've kind of, been on the outskirts of that loneliness, even though I'm within a very supportive group. So, that's one of them. The second one was, a good point. Sorry. I don't remember now. But it's mostly that I want to add is that you can be, lonely within a crowd if you can't find the right person. Oh, I know what it was. Finding someone, that's of like mind. Like, again, one of my, I guess he was kind of a mentor, but more than anything, he was an entrepreneurial friend, right? Was in a completely different industry than I was in. And, but yet it was still kind of a mentor, and it was very supportive because even though the specific examples that we went through as far as like struggles and successes were completely different, the fundamentals of business were the same, and the fundamental emotional reactions to ups and downs were the same. So even though it was someone who wasn't in the same industry, it was someone who's on the same, journey of life, and that I found to be really, really helpful as well, because, he was the same way, like you were discussing. Not only was a mentor, but he was a cheerleader, right? He believed me, and he gave me different advice. So it doesn't even have to be even close to the same industry, to be someone to confide in. It really just needs to be someone who's on the same journey, the same path as you are, because, emotions are emotions. It doesn't really matter why they were invoked. It just matters that they're the same and they can understand what you're going through.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm going to use this opportunity to share a few words about our sponsor. This episode is brought to you by the Pink Kangaru Network. The Pink Kangaru Network are for individuals that are on a journey of growth. If you are looking to be inspired both in your personal life and or find abundance in your business life, then definitely check out the Pink Kangaru Podcast Network. Some of the shows that you will fall in love with are, of course, Unleash Your Supernova, as well as Tuesday's Book Club. We also have My Cryptocurrency Chronicles, Bringing Intimacy Back, and Trending Diaries, just to name a few. So definitely go and check out Pink Kangaru, and that's Kangaroo with a U. It is a home for wild thinkers. So Ryan, we were just talking about loneliness and as one of the obstacles of entrepreneurship that can lead to someone stepping off that path and journey.
Yeah.
And something that's not always talked about with what I'm really interested in diving into with you is criticism. And I'm just going to read what I have here in the book. People don't always have faith in anyone that wants to start their own business until they are successful. Sometimes it's hard not to take the negative feedback personally, but always take time to separate good criticism from the bad. Don't squander your time focusing on the negative comments. So let's talk about that a bit, because that is real.
It's so damn easy to say. It's so easy to say and so hard. Like, how do you figure out what's legitimate criticism? Some of them are obvious from the standpoint of we got a bunch of people on Twitter who don't know anything from anything. They may be a bot. That kind of criticism is obvious to ignore, right? But let's say it's a family member. Let's say it's a coworker. Let's say it is a mentor. Let's say it's, it could be a customer. Like, how do you really figure out what's legit and what's not, right? Because everybody's like, believe in yourself and stay on your path. But that doesn't mean that sometimes the criticism that you're hearing isn't legitimate, right? But that also doesn't mean sometimes the criticism you're hearing isn't someone who's just in a bad mood today. it's, it's not
right.
easy to determine good versus bad criticism. Like there's no like bright line rule of thumb. At least in my experience, there's not. I mean, in many ways, it starts with finding people that you trust their opinion. But that takes time. That takes a lot of not only self introspection to figure out whether or not you value that person's opinion, but that takes really going through examples of criticism to figure out whether or not that person was right. Like you know what I'm saying? That takes time. So
well, I'm going to jump in to say
you figured out. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, I'm going to say my thought on that is you can tell the difference between good and bad, and because one, it's obvious in terms of the intention of whoever's speaking with you. That's one way to decide. Also, you're going to have individuals that want to talk you out of doing something because they're not doing it too, right? Like they didn't have.
Agreed, but those are always examples, I think. Mm-hmm.
Right. So I do think you can sift through the obvious good and obvious bad criticism. I think any criticism we get is hard to take because it's a form, most of the time we take it as a form of judgment. And if you have a coach or you have a mentor, you have a colleague or a friend that really cares about you, if they truly care about you and the success of your business, and you're doing something that they know is going to take your business sideways, they're going to let you know. And it may not always be tactful. And that criticism shouldn't sway you from moving forward. Likewise, if an individual, I had plenty of experiences where people, you don't have experience in that. What are you doing? Or you don't have enough money to do that. What are you thinking? You're going to have those individuals. And you know what? Let that fuel your fire. Okay?
Oh, I agree.
Just say, watch me do it. I love those people that say, oh no, you can't do that. I'm like, oh really? Watch me. So I feel that we are sensitive, most of us, I would say, are sensitive to criticism. Who likes being told, something that's not positive? But the key is, you cannot let that sway you or deter you if you're doing this for the right reason. Like, don't step off the journey of entrepreneurship because someone said you didn't deserve to be there, or you didn't know enough about it, or you're not old enough, or you don't have enough money. No, like that's what I want you to get from this is making sure that one, your why, you're doing it for, a reason that's bigger than you, and know you're going to be criticized, especially if you're doing something new. No one's done it in the way you've done it or the way you're doing it right now. So people are going to judge. That's just the way it is. Know that going in and you brush it off. You take in the advice that feels right and you brush off everything else.
Yeah, two things. A, you're talking about negative feedback being judgment. And the reality is positive feedback is just as much judgment as negative feedback. So people need to embrace that people judge. And I think once you acknowledge that, it makes life easier. Because positive feedback is just as much a judgment as negative feedback is. Because, by definition, judgment is judgment, right? But, the other thing you're saying is, I think we're kind of defining, negative feedback different ways. I think you were kind of going broader, and I agree with you, but I guess I was kind of going negative or kind of more granular because, if you put out like an article, right, people are going to give you feedback on it. In many ways, that's an opinion, right? And so, I was looking at it that way versus, you're looking at it more macro from the standpoint of starting something new, and I agree with that or, doing it for the right reason. Like, those definitely, those type of criticisms do come out of usually those people's fear, those people's inadequacies, or those people's jealousies. And I completely agree with that kind of stuff. That kind of stuff needs to be ignored and dealt with and either used as fuel for fire or just, ignored as nonsense and background white noise. But I was looking more like, when it comes to work product and when it comes to that being evaluated, sometimes that criticism is legitimate and figuring out when that criticism is legitimate versus, noise, that's when it becomes more difficult. And so, that's kind of where I went with the question, because not only is it something I've struggled with, I think it's something that a lot of people struggle with. Especially when it's, your baby and you're attached to it and you hear something negative, you're immediately going to have that emotional reaction because, it is your baby. It is tied. And then how do you step back? How do you remove that emotion to then step back and look at it logically and go, you know what? There's a valid point to that. Or, you know what? That's total nonsense. That was more where I was going with that question.
Yeah, no, I get you. I do feel that on a micro level, it does become more fuzzy.
Yeah.
But yeah, it definitely becomes more fuzzy. And I just feel that the takeaway should be when you're creating something new, be ready to be judged and be okay with that. Believe in what you're doing. Surround yourself with positive people that also know what they're doing. That helps to keep you
sometimes
guided.
You're wrong. Like that's reality. That goes back to pivoting.
Yeah.
Sometimes you're what you think is the right path is wrong, and you need people who are not going to be sycophants and tell you, "Oh, great job," always. Like you do need sometimes that rational voice of experience that's like, "Oh, this isn't going to work for these 5 reasons."
That's right.
So
no, I agree. I think that's where the mentors come in. That's where the coaches come in, and individuals that have your back. So when they are providing those, that negative feedback, you're not taking it personal. You're not, like, oh, I can't do this because no, it's a problem to solve. That's it. It's just a problem to solve. So I know we are getting close to time, and I do want to take some questions from our listeners. I do want to have a chance to go over at least a couple. And this question is directed to you, Ryan. How did you make your first sale?
Oh, it's an ironic question because sales is my weakest, thing as an entrepreneur. And how did I make my first sale? The reality was I went through a bunch of calls and made a bunch of mistakes, and and a lot of it was because I was listening to people, and this is what you should do, that was not authentic to me. And if it's not authentic to, in this example, me, but anybody, it's really hard to believe in the messaging, the product, the service, whatever the situation may be. And if you don't believe in it, no one's going to believe in it. And so I had to ignore what I had been told, then step back and figure out what really is authentic to me. What message do I want to convey? Who do I want to be as a business person? What kind of value do I want to convey? And then how do I, convey that over, in a sales call? And so that's really that's what made and it's hard to do. Because it's kind of like I mentioned earlier, everybody's going to tell you, oh, this is how you do it. It's like, follow the script. It made me $1 million in sales. A, you don't know if it made them $1 million in sales. And B, if it's authentic to them, it's more than likely not going to be authentic to you. So it probably won't make you $1 million in sales. Scripts are great, but they need to be your scripts. And that takes practice. Right. That takes going through the fire and figuring out your mistakes and figuring out what works, figuring out why it works, and then being able to reproduce it. So that's how I made my first sale.
Awesome. That was very interesting. I didn't know that. This next question is for me, and it's how did you come up with the name for your company? And so this is a trick question because obviously, I have a few brands, but I will focus on Raine magazine, and that was my second big project. Nova and Ryon, which has my name, is my fashion company. But Raine magazine is about growth. Like there's two. It's a double meaning to Raine. It's about growth. It's about inspiration. When you think of what the rain does to the earth and the nourishment it provides, the plants and people. And so I wanted to bring that concept into the magazine. I wanted the content to nourish the readers, to inspire the readers, to help the readers grow. And I felt Raine was the perfect word for that. Also, if you take my name, Lorraine, second half of my name, and you cut it down the middle, kind of down the middle, you get Raine. And so it was just perfect. It's, I like to create things that have more than one meaning, where the story is layered. And I feel that that's how we are as individuals and people. We're not just a single layer. We're multidimensional. We have, richness to our stories. And I like to convey that in the names that I come up with. And Pink Kangaroo is another that stands out, as a name for me with brand. And when you think of a kangaroo, the last thing you're going to think of a kangaroo with color. So that already tells you that it's something out of the box, unique. And when you think of this animal, it's a very unique animal, unless you live in Australia. And most of us have never seen a kangaroo in our life, or may not see one in our lifetime in person, like up front and close and personal. And so it just represents the individual that is unique, and it's okay to be unique, and celebrate that uniqueness, celebrate that rarity, celebrate your thinking and the fact that it is different than most. And in terms of the animal, it hops forward. It also has a pouch where it keeps its young close by, and it cradles and nurtures its young. And so I feel our hosts are doing that with their listeners. They're providing that nourishment for their listeners, and they're taking those leaps forward in terms of the topics they're covering and the mission that they're on. So there's just a lot of meaning that goes behind Pink Kangaroo. And then, of course, you can't spell it the way everyone else spells it. You got to spell it with a U. So,
because it's all about you, right?
So those are two names that I like to share.
Before we get there, I want to bring up something that I thought was really powerful when it came to Raine. You mentioned multi-layer and basically dynamic, right? And that's one thing that I think corporate America, fails at, that entrepreneurs don't, is corporate America, I don't mean whitewash in this example as far as like make everyone act like they're white, but kind of whitewash from the standpoint of like make people act in one way, right? And with a very narrow definition of professional. And I remember when I was, working in corporate America, I'm professional by nature, but having to act that way, like the way, like their definition of professional, in many ways, stifled my creativity because I had to stifle my personality. Cause I, in the accounting department, and I'm just too wild and crazy for the accounting department. And so, people are dynamic. People are multi-layered. People do have more interest, and they do more things than what they do as a job. And I think if they were allowed to embrace that and express that in more ways, I think it would help corporations a lot, not only from a employee happiness standpoint, but I think that creativity could inspire incredible shifts, pivot, just different ideas within products, services, offerings that not only would benefit the corporation, but I think could benefit the consumer as well. So anyway, just something I thought needed to be highlighted.
Yeah, no, thank you. I think that's very true, and thanks for sharing that. And this could be a quicker response for both of us. This is directed towards the both of us. And it's, what activities would you recommend entrepreneurs invest their time in? So I'll let you go first, and then I'll answer.
Learning. I'm always about learning, whether it's reading, podcasts, or just conversations with people who are in the same industry that you are. Learning is always one of them. Exercise is another one. It not only helps with your physical and gives you energy, but it helps to me, it helps a lot of mental clarity, and it helps relieve a tremendous amount of stress that comes from being an entrepreneur. And the other one is have interest outside of your work. It's amazing how much just stepping away, allowing your brain to think about something other than your work, which you're currently focused on, not only allows it to heal and recover, but that's when those moments of creativity and inspiration come. It's when the brain is kind of like, subconsciously working on the problem, but you're actively engaged in something else. So those are the three things I would recommend.
I echo everything that you just said.
So what happens when you let me go first? You can't have any original answers.
No, I got something for you.
Okay.
I'm gonna answer.
Do this all in your pajamas? Is that your recommendation?
No, I'm gonna answer it a little differently. I would say, instead of specifically saying 3 items, one of the sayings that I've been holding very close to me for this past year is do more of what you love with who you love. And there are many things that we tolerate. There are many things that we like. And there are probably fewer things that we can say we love. And so if we just created a short list of the things that you love to do, if you love to run, if you love to read, if you love to podcast, and then think of those individuals you enjoy doing those things with, and do more of those things together, because entrepreneurship is a journey. There's always a new goal that you're going to want to achieve as an entrepreneur, because you're inherently a creator. And if every day of that journey is filled with joy, with experiences you're creating, with individuals you care about, and you're doing things that you really love, then every day is like winning the lotto. Every day is an amazing day, and not saying that you're not going to have those highs and lows. We all do, but it makes the journey, it makes the marathon so much easier. And so, as we were saying, it's about surviving entrepreneurship, because there are many things that can, take you off track. And if you're doing more of what you love with who you love, you're going to have much more in the well, of what I call the well of inspiration, the well of creativity, the well of well-being, the well of ideas, the well of abundance. You're going to have much more to tap into. So that's my advice for that.
Yeah, no, I love it. I do. Because why are we doing this if we're not doing it with people we love and with and what we love, right? Like this, it makes no sense.
Absolutely. So we are at the close of our show again. I can't believe it always goes by so fast. I don't think I gave you enough jabs this week, though, Ryan. So I'm going to have to save some more jabs for you next week.
That's because we were serious and trying to convey like really powerful, impactful information. So.
Oh man. No, I appreciate you.
You should go after your spirit creature, your spirit, your kangaroo, right? Like they used to box and they kick like hell. So, keep that as your inspiration for next week's show.
There you go. I want to thank you, Ryan. I want to thank our listeners for tuning in for another episode of Unleash Your Supernova Live. If you missed the show on BBS Radio, just check us out on our podcast, Unleash Your Supernova. You can find it on unleashyoursupernova.com, on the Evergreen Podcast Network, and of course on the Pink Kangaroo Podcast Network. It's always a pleasure sharing with you tips, wisdom, and words of advice on how to increase your creativity, beat burnout, and continue to tap into that limitless potential. So continue unleashing your supernova. Until next time, and thank you to my partner in crime, Ryan Esquire. And remember, that's Ryan with an O, Ryon. Take care, guys.
Have a good week, everybody.